A preface.
Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
If you're a fan of comic books and comic book conventions, Daytona Beach Comic Con needs to be on your list of must-attend events. It's a show that actually focuses on comic books. Imagine that! This year's event is happening on Saturday, September the 6th, and Sunday, September the 7th. Silverline creators will be there, so we'll see you at the show. If you find yourself in the Orlando area, and let's be honest, doesn't everyone come to Orlando for the House of Mouse? Head over to Coliseum of Comics to get your comic book fix. Be sure to check out their location on East Colonial Drive, where they carry a wide selection of independent comics, including Silverline books. Stop by and don't forget to tell them Silverline sent you. Hey, if you're an independent comic creator looking to get your comic printed, look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our comics and do a fantastic job. They can even print special edition covers. When you reach out to them, be sure to tell them Silverline sent you. Looking for a bold way to boost your business? Advertise with Silverline Comics, reaching readers across the U.S. and around the world. Affordable rates, passionate fans, and national and international exposure, all packed inside thrilling, action-packed comics. All ads must be PG-13, perfect for reaching all ages. Spots are limited. Grab your ad space today and become part of the adventure. Silverline Comics, where adventure lives and your brand thrives. Email us at silverlinepublishingllc@gmail.com for more information. And make mine Silverline.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. I am Jose Fuentes, the inker for Silverline Comics. I'm joined with on our stream by David. Say hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Something here, buddy.
It's all good, Jose.
Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
And just side note, I saw your Facebook, Ron, and woohoo.
Oh, hey, thanks. Yeah, for the uninitiated, I just wrapped up yesterday 6 weeks of radiation treatments for my post-mastectomy treatment, and yeah, 30 days of radiation treatments, and you should. Man, if you saw my chest right now, it looks like I came out of a house fire. You know, just really, I'm barbecued. You know. But hey, it's all done. It's the science today is amazing. Medicine,
That's awesome.
All this good stuff. I feel great. I feel absolutely super. Hopefully, that will assure that cancer never comes back, and I can get back on to, like I was saying earlier, back to doing the things I love doing. Reading,
Right.
editing, and all that fun stuff. So and I want to take it. For all you guys out there who sent me good wishes and prayers those last 6 weeks. Thanks. They meant a lot to me. All of that lifted me up and made me know I wasn't doing this by myself. Thank the good Lord, and here we are.
That's super awesome. I just wanted to, give a shout out on that one. I appreciated seeing it. I know that you've kept us up to date with what was going on and whatnot, and you've been in my family's prayers and thoughts. So
Well, thank you again. I know when I'm lifted up like that, I'm a man of faith myself. When I got the diagnosis, it was one of those things where even as bad as it was, we caught it in time.
right.
No, we caught it in time. I had the surgery like a week and a half after I noticed that lump. And hey, I've mentioned this here before, but I'll mention it again. It's worth noting because during the 6 weeks process, I met a lot of other cancer patients. And you go into the clinic every day for your treatment. And most of the guys that I was with were there for prostate cancer. Okay. So, I mean, it's a testimony to getting regular physical checkups all the time. All right. Because when you can catch these things, again, the science and of medicine today has come up with so many great treatments if it's caught in time.
Right.
If you catch the cancer early, you can treat it. You can survive. It's no longer, I can remember growing up as a kid, and if you had cancer, they pretty much said, well, that's it. It's all done. You need to wrap it up. But we've come leaps and bounds. But you got to catch it. You got to do, checkups and whatever. With me, it was a case of one night just taking a shower and felt this lump on my chest over my breast. And I went, hey, that wasn't there, yesterday. What the heck? So the first thing the next day, I called my family doctor, told him what was going on. He said, come on in. So he checked it, sent me over to the cancer place, right? They did a mammogram on me, a biopsy, found out I had this little cancer node growing in, my breast. And that, like I said, a week and a half later, the surgery had it removed, clean. They got it all. And then we did this radiation to make sure all those cells are never going to come back. There you go.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's our PSA for the evening, guys. Boys and girls.
So what's our theme? Tell everybody what our theme is for tonight, Jose.
Our theme tonight is relaunches, crossovers, and cash grabs. Oh my.
Oh man, I tell you.
Are relaunches directly related to cash grabs?
So I think all of them. I think everything in the category is related to cash grabs. And
I mean, obviously, okay.
Yeah, Marvel
but
relaunches titles all the time. You know what I mean?
I think crossovers are the most fun of all. I mean, like I've mentioned in the past, I'm old enough to have been around when Marvel launched. And, for that year, 1960, when all these new titles were coming out every other month, it was like, man, this is cool. You had Fantastic Four. Then you had Spider-Man. Then you had Iron Man. Then you had Thor. And this goes on for like about 6-7 months until, sure enough, I think issue number 3 or number 4 of Fantastic Four, and there's Spider-Man showing up on the cover of Fantastic Four. And I mean, if you're a kid, you go, holy smokes, right? Two of my favorite characters. And even back then, I mean, even as far back as we go, like the 1950s and whatever, 57, 58, DC was doing World's Finest.
Yep.
Which every month you'd had Spider-Man and, Batman and Superman together in an adventure. So crossovers have always been huge. I mean, people just absolutely love them. Hey, what's better than one hero? Two together,
right? Especially when they cross over from different franchises, different companies, different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tim had mentioned earlier, which Tim is the wizard behind the curtain tonight. He's feeling a little under the weather, but Tim had mentioned. There he is.
I'm currently in a dark red room nursing some Excedrin, but yeah.
But he had mentioned DC had already. I've seen artwork for it, but like are going to be DC and Marvel are going to be doing their crossover. You know what I mean? Where before was it in the 90s they did it? They did their amalgam universe where they crossed over and kind of made new old characters.
The first classic crossover was the giant life-size magazine, and I have copies of those somewhere in my office right here, which I never let go. But that first one, with Superman and Spider-Man hooking up. Man, I must have chased every mom and pop, drugstore all over town, waiting for that sucker to come out. And I was really, really curious to see how they would make it work, story-wise, and of course, the creators behind that one issue were brilliant because they basically played off of both Clark Kent and Peter Parker being news hounds.
Yep.
And once you brought that in together, it just worked. It just absolutely worked. And it was absolutely fantastic. Then they followed that up with what? That was the first one. And then the second one, I believe, wasn't it Batman and the Hulk?
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
I think it was Batman and the Hulk. And the kicker, again, going back to this, it was also brilliant on their part to make them life size. All right, because up until this time, we're just collecting comics, and the average 8x11.5 or whatever, and it's just great. But man, you're going to do something like this, which is going to be so monumental in comic book history. Come on, you want to make it spectacular. You want to make it something, everybody's going to say, wow, this has got to be big. And so buying this giant comic book with these two great heroes from both houses together was just amazing.
They were big, right? Like they were.
That was treasury size, right?
Almost 11 by 17, right?
Yeah.
If not 11 by 17, they were huge.
Yeah, those are the treasury.
Yeah, those were the sizes of Life and Look magazine. For all you people out there those are old magazines that have since gone away, but they were weekly magazines you found, on the racks in news stores and mom and pops and whatever. And yeah, they made the comic books, almost 3 times the normal size. They should have been. They were classics. And believe me, I hung on to all of those. Those are prized comics in my collection for sure.
That's cool. I have a friend that has them, or some of them anyway. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it was just kind of interesting because I know kind of leading up to, the crossover they're having at now is they had, I don't know if 6 months, 9 months ago, they had re-released 2 volumes of omnibuses that one was the Marvel and DC universe, and then the second one was the Amalgam universe.
Right. So
they released those, and I thought it was kind of a one-up thing, and then they come out with this. So I guess they're kind of ramping up for that. But I also used to enjoy the crossovers from some of the independents. When I was working from Malibu, doing Malibu and the Marvel stuff, one of the things that I got to do some pages on was Spider-Man Gen 13.
Oh, nice.
So I got to color some of those. That was kind of fun. But one of the books that came out that everybody was waiting a long time for, and I know that I know that some members of our group here are gonna big on it, like Mr. Belcher and a couple others, was the Batman Grendel books that came out, and I thought that was very interesting about that pairing was the fact that you had 2 mortals that were brilliant, and they had their toys, their way of doing things, and their egos to go up against each other. And and it was paired very well. It wasn't your Superman fighting so and so. It was 2 mortals in costumes doing it, and it was fantastic. And they had a couple of volumes of it. But sometimes it's nice to see those intercompany crossovers come up.
Well, let's see if I can pull this up if I'm smart enough. Share screen, because Ron has a crossover.
Ron's always prepared. He's just
Dude, for real.
He's just awesome.
Let's see.
But this
Page. There we go.
So here we go. So Ben Dunn, Antarctic Press, right? About a year ago, relaunched his own character, Tomorrow Girl, and started doing her regular adventures again after a hiatus for a while. And she became the series became super popular. Along about the time I had started communicating with Ben again about working together on some of the projects that he was doing at Antarctic Press. And I noticed that what he was doing is what David was talking about. He was pairing Tomorrow Girl with other independent heroes.
Yeah.
All right. And he was doing a lot of those, and they're really cool. So he came back to me and suggested, hey, could we pair Tomorrow Girl with your character, Mr. Jigsaw, Man of 1,000 Parts? So, I'm like, okay, that's a cool idea. I said, give me some information about Tomorrow Girl. He sent me some data and research and whatever, biography, what her strengths were, all this. She's basically his version of Supergirl. So I sat down and I wrote this 24-page adventure where Tomorrow Girl and Mr. Jigsaw meet in this one-shot adventure, which Ben was going to do for Antarctic Press. Well, in the course of writing the book, one of the things you do with crossovers as a writer, all right, if you want it to be a really good story, is you try to balance the appearance of each hero so that it's not overly favoring one hero and the other hero takes like a back seat. If you do a good crossover, they get equal time. All right. It's both their stories together, working together, whatever challenges they're facing. In the process of doing the script, it dawned on me that I hadn't written a number 18 for the Mr. Jigsaw series for my partner, Gary Carter, artist Gary Carter. And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. And I got a hold of Gary and Ben and Rob Davis, who prints and publishes the Redbud Studio, Mr. Jigsaw. And I suggested to all of them, I said, hey, would you guys have any problems with us doing 2 comic books based on the same script? That being the case, we would do the script, Gary would draw it, and it would be an issue of Mr. Jigsaw, which we have since done. Ben would take it, get it illustrated for Antarctic Press, and it would be an issue of Antarctic Press, illustrated by a different artist. That way, ultimately, fans could get both copies and see the differences in how each artist approached the script and how they did their layouts and panels or whatever. So what you're seeing now is one half of that. This came out at the start of the year, and very recently, Ben sent me copies, I think, of the first 7 pages done by this Antarctic artist that he's recruited to do their version of it. Guys, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, right? Because, the guy he got, and I say guy, it might be a girl. He didn't give me a name, but it's totally manga style.
Nice.
Where Gary's work is very Ditko-esque. He draws very much like Steve Ditko. That's his hero. And that's who he's been enamored with and actually, like I said, shaped the way he draws action and whatever. So there's actually going to be 2 versions of this story ultimately before the year's over. And who knows, maybe eventually we can all get together and combine them in one issue so that fans can, and even reprint the script itself and have fans look at it, So yeah, crossovers are a ball. They really are a lot of fun.
So Ben Dunn's version, like then, Antarctic Press version, you said manga art style. Is it read right to left, or does it read left to right?
Oh, it reads left to right.
Okay.
It's like an American comic. All right.
Okay.
But again,
Just curious,
when you
because that'd be kind of cool if you put them together and whatnot, and they read like this towards the middle.
No, I again, like I said, and the fun of this, and I give kudos to Ben, because I think Ben has that idea of bringing all this together, because the Mr. Jigsaw series is in black and white, and Antarctic Press comics are in full color.
Yeah.
So when we finished doing this, we were just waiting for him to get the stuff done. And he got a hold of me and said, "Hey, Ron, is there any way I can see the Mr. Jigsaw book, right now to see what you guys did?" I said, "Well, all right. I just didn't want to influence the other artists. I want the other artists to do it based on the script." He said, No. But I said, I'd like to look at the script myself, what you guys did, the finished product. So we sent him all the artwork in a giant PDF of this particular issue you have in front of you right now. All right. Okay. So Ben sees it, gets back to me about a day later and goes, "Hey, would you guys like to see this in color?" And I went, "What, our issue?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "I can get it colored for you if you want." Hey, so basically, that's where I think this is going. At the same time, he's producing the Antarctic version of this story,
Right.
Time Quakes. All right. He's also coloring this version. So ultimately, like I said, I think we're going to see a special edition from Antarctic Press that'll contain both versions. And like I said, we haven't finalized anything yet, but if that becomes the ultimate goal and plan, I am definitely going to make the actual written script available to reprint in that issue. So
Nice.
People will also be able to read the script and then look at the various pages of artwork.
Yeah, I feel, and I don't know how many more other crossovers he's done with Tomorrow Girl, but I know he's kind of leading into something cool, because I saw on social media that he had asked if anybody wanted Tomorrow Girl to come across their universe, their world, like they're popping in and popping out. I guess is my understanding, but just from the social media post.
The latest one, which he was advertising last week, all right, which I thought was absolutely hilarious, was Tomorrow Girl and Atomic Mouse. All right, which is that Mighty Mouse clone, So so they're both flying on the cover, Tomorrow Girl and Atomic Mouse. That is wicked cool. That is awesome. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, crossovers are fun. I mean, I don't know anybody that wouldn't pick it up just to read it. Just, oh man, this heroes with this heroes, or these villains with these villains. Like they're just they're just fun. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's fun, and to me, anyways, in doing that initially, was hopefully getting her right. Okay, she's somebody else's character. She's not my character. She's she's Ben's. So I mean, again, he was decent enough to send me PDFs of earlier issues of Tomorrow Girl for me to read.
Right.
And to get my head around the character and write appropriate dialogue and how she approaches things and whatever. And doing Mr. Jigsaw, there's always this element of humor involved with it. And I was able to add that to this crossover, this team up, all right, and have some laughs with it beside the action and the adventure. So I'm kind of hoping, the people who've seen the Mr. Jigsaw comic book have enjoyed it. Like I said, we're just now waiting for the Antarctic version. And once that appears, then we'll move on to phase 2 and see if we can do something really special.
Right. So another topic on our list of topics is relaunches.
Yeah, right. Like I haven't made a career of that.
Well, I was going to say, you have a pretty good history of that as well. Green Hornet?
Yeah.
There was, you gave us like 3 last week. And I just drew a blank, right?
Yeah.
What is he? Green Hornet? You're going to have to tell me what they are, Ron, because I
Terminator.
Terminator.
Thank you.
Right. And Rambo.
Oh, I forgot about Rambo. That's the one I couldn't remember. I would have gotten there.
Yeah, we were talking. I mean, Ben and I first hooked up when we did a Popeye comic book together, and we that was a definite relaunch.
Right.
We gave the world our version of Popeye, and the unique and fun thing about that is at that time when we did it, which is like going back now almost 35 years ago, it was still a licensed property. It wasn't public domain. It was still owned by King Features Syndicate. But you know, hey, I wrote an origin story for Popeye. The editor, Bob Palin at Ocean Comics, called King Features and says, "Hey, I got a guy who's, you know, written this new script that we want, you know," and he'd already made an arrangement with them to do, I believe, 3 Popeye comics.
Okay.
And they were just anxious to get Popeye back into comics. At that time, he was still just appearing in newspapers. So when he called them up and said, you know, Ron's written an origin story, you know, is there any issues with that? Do you want to read the script or whatever? And they basically shrugged him off and said, no, whatever you guys do is okay with us. No worries about it. I don't know if they thought there's nothing we can do to kill Popeye or whatever, which is probably true anyways. All right. But I modernized him just a wee bit. You know, I kept all the iconic things like his, you know, eating spinach and getting strong, Poop Dick Pappy being his father and he's looking for him and all this, right? But what I did was I had him join the Navy after he got out of school. Okay. And that's the beginning of his, you know, becoming a sailor eventually, you know, and learning, you know, boats and crafts and all this good stuff. And that's where he meets Wimpy and Bluto, because they're other sailors on the ship he's on and all this good stuff, right? And Ben and Bob Palin got Ben Dunn to do the artwork for that. And that was the first time Ben and I had hooked up to do that Popeye comic book. And we did that one, and I did a second one the following year with Gary Cotto doing the artwork. And basically, again, when you do relaunches of anything, I think the classic rule, and we've talked about this many times on this show, is do your homework. I mean, study what it is you're relaunching, okay? So for me, it was like learning everything I could about L.C. Segar, the guy who created Popeye, learning the history of the strip itself, how it came to be, all those kind of things, right? And so when it came time to do the second one the following year, I'm trying to come up with an idea for a story until I realized that one of the jokes of Popeye over the years, including all the cartoons he appeared in, right from the Fleischer Studios, was the fact that people kept confusing his number one villain as either Brutus or Bluto.
Oh.
Sometimes he was Bluto, sometimes he was Brutus. Sometimes, and it was like, and that was where my idea was born. I went, well, wait a minute. What if they're twins? Okay. So we wrote a story around the fact that Popeye's ship was going to Australia, and the year that comic was going to come out was the country of Australia celebrating its 200th centennial. All right. So basically, the U.S. sends this ship, this U.S. Navy ship, to help celebrate, and they go to Sydney, Australia, and Bluto, who's aboard with Popeye and everything, right, basically is all nervous until they find out that his twin brother has turned out to be an outlaw in the Outlands, Brutus, the bad guy. All right. And eventually they meet face to face and they duke it out. Popeye helps Bluto help capture his evil twin brother. And it was a crazy stuff, but it was a lot of fun. And again, that's man, if you're lucky enough to work on characters that you personally like, all right, and that goes back to the Green Hornet. You know, the Green Hornet TV series came out when I was in the Army. And I got to see maybe about half of that first season where I was stationed. There was a day room, there was television there, and I got to see quite a few of the episodes. But again, it's not till like about 10, 15 years later that I got this idea with an artist, Steve Irwin, who's since passed away, Steve had this idea of wanting to bring back the Green Hornet in comic book version. All right. And again, it was a case of, okay, so I spent like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months researching the character and found out about the fact that, he'd been born on radio, right? The same radio station that created the Lone Ranger ultimately wanted a second hero, so they created the Green Hornet. And that's where you find out that both characters are actually related to each other. All right. Britt Reed is the Lone Ranger's great grand nephew. All right.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you listen to the Lone Ranger TV radio show, and ultimately they transferred a lot of those scripts to TV when it became a TV series. All right. Every summer, his nephew Dan Reed would come out west to spend 2 weeks with his uncle. All right, who was really John Reed. Now, everybody eventually realized his older brother had been killed in the origin story.
Yeah.
And the Rangers are caught right in that dead man's gulch by Butch Cassidy and his team. And the only Ranger who survives is young John Reed. All right. Tano finds him, nurses him to health, and he becomes the Lone Ranger. Well, his older brother Dan had been married. His wife was back in St. Louis with their son, Dan Reed Jr. Okay. Oh. So again, now you have these episodes that they did, which the young listeners loved, was this kid would go out and spend a week with his uncle. How cool was that? His uncle was the Lone Ranger. All right. So now the show's on the air for a couple years. It's hugely successful. One of the greatest radio programs ever made. People would go nuts over it. And George Trendle, the owner of the station, says to Fran Stryker, his head writer, the guy who helped create the Lone Ranger with him, right? We need a second one. We need a second, dramatic hero show that people are going to love. So supposedly Stryker goes home for the weekend and comes back the following Monday and proposes to Trendle that all they do is update the Lone Ranger to a degree where instead of having an Indian companion, he has this Japanese valet who knows martial arts. And instead of, riding around on a white horse and yelling "Hi-ho, Silver," he has this super black car, which he calls the Black Beauty. But here's what he does. He keeps the same little twist that, the Lone Ranger, rode around wearing a mask and was always confused for being a bad guy, an outlaw, because he had a mask. Okay. Well, what if the Green Hornet, this crusading newspaper publisher, all right, actually disguised himself as a masked gun outlaw, criminal. All right. He could get in with the bad guys and then foil their plans. All right. Okay. So they launched the show. They launched the radio program, The Green Hornet, right? And again, boom, they hit another bullseye. The show is a huge hit. All right. So now the show's on for, 5 or 6 months, right? And they identified the Green Hornet as Britt Reed. All right. Now you're just wondering if anybody's picking up on that word Reed from the Lone Ranger. Well, I don't know if they picked it up or not, but the idea is, so you get this one episode one night where the folks at home are listening to this, right? And old time radio was just absolutely great because you would sit there and imagine stuff, right? And voice actors. So here comes a scene where Britt's in his office at the Daily Sentinel talking to the police commissioner, and suddenly his intercom goes on, right? And it's his secretary, Lenore's voice. And she goes, "Britt, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but your father's here." Okay. So Britt goes, "Oh, good. Send him in." Okay. So now you hear a door open. You hear footsteps, right? "Hi, son." "Hi, Dad. I think Commissioner, so-and-so." And then you hear, "Oh, yeah, right. Good to see you, Frank." "Same here, Dan. How you doing?" And suddenly, click, click, click. Britt's father's name is Dan Reed. Yeah. Okay. The Lone Ranger's nephew was the Green Hornet's father. And there was that connection. And some fans did pick up on it. They did get it. So again, I'm getting all this information. I find out about the radio show. I find out that in 1940, Universal did a 15 chapter Green Hornet cliffhanger serial that was so successful that the following year they did a second one called The Green Hornet Strikes Again. All right. Again, just, fans go to the theater every week and see them in action, whatever. Highly successful. And eventually, Fawcett Comics did a Green Hornet comic book during World War II. So he was even in comics then, all right? Then we don't see the Green Hornet until 1966, 67, I think. End of 66, early 67 on ABC, that short-lived TV series with Van Williams and Bruce Lee.
Yep.
Okay. And so now I'm like thinking, okay, so how do I do this? How do I relaunch a character that's been around since like the late 1930s in all these various, incarnations and whatever? And when you look at what ABC did, ABC just reinvented him. All right. They just basically said, here he is for the 1960s. Okay. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Only because I love this history. I love the radio episodes I'd gotten to listen to, right, on cassettes and whatever.
Right.
I actually got my hands on the cliffhanger serials on VHS tapes and watched those. All right. And I'm like, what if I could hook all that up together? And that's when this whole idea of doing it as a legacy kind of thing, where they're all related, one generation to the next generation to the next
Working its way down.
Right. And that was the proposal I wrote and pitched to Now Comics out of Chicago, which they loved. They took it to the licensors in New York. The licensors loved it. And next thing you know, we had, and no pun intended, but the green light to go ahead and do this. And suddenly the Green Hornet is back in print. And I think issue number 1 of that series sold 250,000 copies.
Wow.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, my local comic shop, I was living back in New England at the time, back in New Hampshire. And my local comic shop, the guy who ran it, literally was ordering as many copies of the Green Hornet every month as he was Marvel and DC Comics. The years that it was published by Now Comics, it was easily the best title they had. It was just absolutely insane. So there you go. It's just, it's a challenge to bring back something that's been around for a long time.
Right.
But then again, it's what you put into it. If you do your homework for it, and then hopefully you can add something to it, maybe a little something fresh and different. And you know what? That I want to segue with that into the fact that I'm doing that again now with another character that was around back then. All right. And that was Ben Dunn had created a spin-off series to his highly successful Warrior Nun. When Ben started Art Press back in the 80s, right? Late 70s, early 80s, his 2 most popular comic series at that time were Ninja High School and Warrior Nun. All right. And they were huge. So after a couple of years of Warrior Nun, Ben got this idea of what if there had been a Warrior Nun back in the 1930s, like fighting Nazis, like a female version of the Shadow or something, you know what I'm saying? And very pulpish or whatever. And so he whipped up this idea called the Crimson Nun. And he got a couple of creators to do a 4-issue miniseries of the Crimson Nun. Well, you guys know my love of pulps. As much as I love Warrior Nun, this Crimson Nun blew me away. It was absolutely so much fun. And I collected all 4 of them. And that was it. He only ever did those 4 issues. So now, jump back. All these years go by, and 3 years ago, Ben ends up coming here to Colorado to be a guest at a local convention. He and I get to meet face to face for the first time ever. That night, the first night of the con, my wife and I took him out to a restaurant to dinner on us. And while sitting around table eating dinner, I turned around and said, "Hey, I got a question for you. You ever going to do anything with the Crimson Nun again?" And he looked at me and laughed because, he had sold Warrior Nun.
Yeah.
He had sold the rights to that way back when, so he can't do Warrior Nun again. But Crimson Nun, again, was a spinoff. It's a totally different animal. And he personally didn't have any plans. But when I said that, he turned around and looked at me and goes, "Why, you want to do it?" I said, "I love that concept." I said, I waited for like 30 years to get my hands on this character. So Ben goes, "Go ahead and do it." I said, "Well, let me send you a plot. I've got an art team put together and whatever." And he goes, "I don't need to see a plot. I know who you are. I know what you can do. Not a problem." He literally went home and the following week was announcing on Facebook that Ron Fortier was doing a Crimson Nun miniseries. Not impressed. All right. The man's faith in me is really, really, really kind. But anyway, so I got a hold of a up and coming artist named Jesse Thomas. Told him what was going on. Told him we got the okay from Ben to proceed with this. And sure enough, I had another friend, a gifted artist who's I'm blanking on the guy's name now, and he's going to shoot me for it. But when he found out all this, because it became public, he got a hold of me with this cover. He sent me a pencil and said, "You think this will make a decent cover for your Crimson Nun miniseries?" And it just blew my mind. I went nuts. I showed it to Ben. Ben said, "Oh yeah, please."
Right.
So there were two covers. This cover, which was the main cover, and Ben himself went out and did his own cover. So we had an alternate cover. So that's Crimson Nun. That's been out now for just a little over a year. And I am really, really excited to announce that I think we're maybe a week away from wrapping up issue number 2.
Nice.
And getting that out. All right. So with fingers crossed. But again, pretty much like with the Green Hornet, when I was working on an actual plot line, a narrative for doing this, I was trying to put together in my mind, I basically went into my comic files, found the original 4-issue miniseries, reread it several times, took all kinds of notes and whatever, and in the end had this really great idea of using the original as a baseline for what I wanted to do, but ultimately ended up creating a brand new Crimson Nun, who's not the same one that was the hero of the first series. And I'm just going to leave it at that as a tease to people listening. All right, but the original Crimson Nun appears in the story, but there's a reason why we end up with a new Crimson Nun, and that's her on the cover. What I think is an absolutely fantastic piece of artwork.
Oh, you're gonna leave it like that? I was even gonna ask, give us a little bit about it, but now Ron's teasing us, guys.
Basically, again, this takes place in 1938. All right, and I will give you this tease. All right, because when the book was ready to be published, Ben came to me and said, "Hey, Ron," he said, "any chance you could give me an essay that we can use on the inside cover and explain a little bit about your own, work and concept of how you came up with this particular storyline?" Okay. Well, in my essay, I explained, and this is where this gets to be a lot of fun, is that when Ben did the original Warrior Nun series, all right, he came up with this concept of a group of modern day nuns, all right, who literally were a private, like, special forces for the Vatican.
Yeah.
Working for the Pope, all right, battling demons who are in the world today. So, I mean, it's typical Ben. Ben loves fantasy, magic, and sorcery and all that. So you had these martial art nuns fighting these demons in human disguise and whatever. Okay. Well, the kicker is, when I was reading that, I was thinking to myself, and I went, gee, Ben, man, you missed something. You missed something. And you know, Ben himself was brought up Catholic. And so when I wrote my essay, I said, the thing that always bugged me about the original Warrior Nun series is that Ben literally forgot, I think, for whatever reason, because he didn't use it, all right, was that if he had gone and looked back on the history of the church, he'd know that there was in actuality a real warrior nun, all right, who picked up a sword and a shield because she got to hear the voice of Michael the Archangel telling her to lead an army of French people and save France from the British invaders, and she was Joan of Arc.
Yep.
Boom. So in my version, that all comes into play. All right. And in fact, the first 5-6 pages of my story is the execution and martyrdom of Joan that you see happen. All right. And it's what kicks off my storyline and who the new character is, who is going to end up being the Crimson Nun, because she is literally guided by the ghost of Joan of Arc.
That's cool.
There you go. And like I said, fingers crossed. I'm really kind of hoping that by the end of September we'll have issue 2 out there for people.
That will be awesome. And yet again, another relaunch of an older series.
Yep.
Well, one of the things we've been talking about things. One of the things I want to kind of differentiate is the term of relaunch compared to in the aspect of relaunching a character, a completely different storyline or a new take on it, versus doing a miniseries versus doing a relaunch of a title, like, for example, what Marvel's been doing with all the X books and all this stuff. So, you know, for me, a lot of the times when I think of more of things like the miniseries, 4 issues, 5 issues, stuff like that, is I tend to move that more into kind of, a side story arc, versus, completely changing things up, starting over with a new number 1, ongoing series, new direction, I don't, I'm not trying to push, a publisher or not, but, it's what we're seeing with, with, like I said, the X books, for example, moving from the Krakoa era and relaunching the From the Ashes, whether it's successful or not, I'll leave that separate.
Right.
But when I start to think of a relaunch, a lot of that factors in on initially following the guideline of a miniseries, and a relaunch is an ongoing series. So that's a lot of what I had, in my head now, because the thing I find about miniseries is most of the things are contained in there, and the potential of the next team, artist, writer, whatever, to take that miniseries and do another miniseries may not necessarily go and continue that relaunch mentality of, hey, this is a case. So, for example, you may have, a superhero that, or say that you're dealing with a war comic. Let's put that out there, and then you have a mini series about a team on the war comic, and you have a follow up on that can continue along that, but the team can come in and say, well, I'm going to take the most popular character from this book, and I'm going to put him in his own miniseries. And instead of putting him in the war, I'm going to put him at home and dealing with, the street thugs and all this stuff. So, and we kind of saw that on the Star Wars, even the last, 3 movies for the Star Wars series is everyone, you sit there and it was maybe intentionally set up for a relaunch, but every creative team, every writer that came in threw their own thing, and it never followed that continuity.
Right.
So a lot of when I think of a relaunch is establishing a continuity, and that continuity lasts for a decent amount of time, not just a short story or something like that. That's kind of the way that I think about a relaunch. But I also consider something of, like, the example that I said is not necessarily, I wouldn't really consider that a relaunch going from the war comic to the other guy. I would consider that a reimagining of the character. If you can kind of see the things of a relaunch holds a lot of, to me, it holds a lot of the basis on it, but takes things in a whole different new direction. Maybe establishes some new things, like, perfect example, Ron, when he's talking about Popeye, coming up, and the history and the family and the mom and all that stuff that's expanding, and and that. So I would consider that a kind of a relaunch and an expansion and all that, but I think there's some little divisions in there on what's a relaunch, what's a reimagining, and what's a self-contained story.
Right. I mean, I think when I hear relaunch, one of the things I think about, Dave, and I'm curious what your thoughts would be on this, but to me, the first time I ever heard relaunch and it got me excited was when DC, out of the blue, back in what was the early 80s, decided, okay, well, we've been doing Superman since 1929 or whatever, all right? And, we're up to issue number 5,000, I don't know, whatever, right? It was ridiculous. And it just kept going on, and everybody was saying, oh, well, Superman's like this, big blue Boy Scout, and there's nothing you can do with it. It's not exciting, and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, right, they go get John Burns, and the promo was, that's it. There's going to be a brand new Superman #1. We are going to relaunch Superman. And that's what they did. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the first 2 or 3 years of that series, I mean, it's what you're talking about. This wasn't just a short mini. This was taking their premier house character that their entire, business was founded on, and redoing him, all right, with a new artist, with a new creative, vision or whatever. And all of a sudden, Superman wasn't boring anymore, all right? I mean, he was like selling through the roof. And that was an honest to goodness relaunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely characterize that. And even in the fact of some of the things that they do with Spider-Man when they bring him back to the to the high school era, and stuff like that. But there is a when you use Byrne as a reference, Byrne's run on Superman as a reference, that was a great analogy of it. On the flip side, there are relaunches that are there to not specifically do justice to the character. It's a relaunch to throw another #1 out there.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
When you go and you look and you say, oh, this
that's the cash grab theme that
that's
we
the
have
yeah,
talked
that's
about.
was
That's
kind of
it.
leading
Yeah.
into this.
We need another #1.
Is when you go and you look at a book and you go, all right, I'm gonna look up X, X whatever, Z-Men, and you look up Z-Men and it's Z-Men 2024, Z-Men 2022, Z-Men 2018, and it's like, well, what series number of Z-Men is it? Is it 7 or series 7, series 8,
Right, exactly.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think that does it. For me, a relaunch is something, a successful relaunch is something that adds and benefits the characters and the storyline, and is not just, like we said, a cash grab. And I know we don't have much time, we're pretty much at the end, but I'm going to switch to the cash grab. And the cash grab is relaunching #1s, special covers,
multiple covers,
reprinting existing things because, hey, like they just did with the Harley Quinn, the one with the Alex Ross cover. They just did a facsimile of that. Because it was successful at the time, and hey, we can just do this and and get more money for the book, the people who didn't buy the original. And we'll give them, a standard cover, a foil cover, and that. And
blank cover.
Blank cover.
Oh.
I'm a sucker for blank covers. Even if it's a facsimile issue,
mm-hmm.
If it has a blank, I was like, oh, it's a facsimile. It's like the old issue, the old comic book and whatnot, like done to look done with modern day, printing technology, but done to look like the classic, dot matrixy colors and whatnot. And then they put a blank cover on it. Oh my gosh, take my money.
but you're have the potential of putting your own artwork and your own take on it, so that's an advantage. But it is a lot with the cash grabs on doing stuff like that. And the other thing that, and I partially tuned into the Sunday show, and one of the things that had Jimmy Palmani on, and he was talking about the binding on some of the DC books, and 10 issues, $10 for a book. Well, what I see a lot, and it still falls under the cash grab, is a lot of the stories and the story arcs are designed so they can be reprinted in a trade. And you'll see a lot of them, particularly like a lot of Image books, storylines are 6 issues. So a lot of that ongoing thing that you're used to, you tune in every month to find out what was happening this month on the new, Amazing Spider-Man 252, and all this stuff.
With the start of a new storyline and the end of a new storyline being on an annual.
Yeah. But these ones are designed so that they could be put in a trade and they can sell trades. And trades are minimal cost because you've already got the artwork. You're just bundling it. So I think that's kind of a cash grab, and on that aspect. So
you got to be careful. You got to be careful of, if you're a publisher, you got to be careful of that, because honestly, comic fans are way savvy. And years ago, I picked up on this whole idea of doing, like story arcs and then turning them into, graphic novels. to the point where it's like you're watching your pennies and what you can afford to buy. All right. I mean, prices keep going up and going up and going up until you realize, okay, this is the start of a new storyline. Okay, this is going to go 5 or 6 issues. So you go to the comic shop and you keep watching it. And then when it's all done, you wait for the trade. I'm just going to buy a trade. I don't want to have all this, the floppies and then want to own the trade. I'm just going to wait for the trade. And that's the pitfall of that kind of promotion cash grab. Because a lot of people are just going to stop buying the floppies because they know you're just planning a trade. Wait for the trade.
See, that hurts my soul because I love floppies.
Well, that's the other thing too, is you're also opening up for other markets, your Barnes and Nobles and things that they don't stock floppies, but they stock trades.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's 100%.
They can get other markets, and again, trades are very, they pay off very well because
much better than
you're paying what, $20 for a trade, $20 for
a lot of them are like 15 for 6 issues.
Yeah,
I saw a trade that Image had done, which was a crime novel by a European artist, and I saw it advertised on Amazon for $25 in hardback. And based on the artwork alone, I bought it. And when it came in and I watched it, and then I realized that it had been a floppy. And I didn't even know it existed until I saw the ad on Amazon. But I'm damn glad I bought it. It's a great, adult crime thriller. All right. Beautiful artwork, great story. All right. But that's where the bucks are. And, if it's done with that kind of quality in art, people are going to pay those kind of prices and get their money's worth.
And think about, turn around. Speaking of John Byrne, think about the Dark Phoenix saga. Okay. That was a single run that came out, in the 70s or 80s that John Byrne did. But we're having the re-releases of the facsimile copies now. We're having the epic collections. We're having the small trades, the Dark Phoenix saga, and we're having the X-Men omnibuses. We've got hardcover versions, softcover versions of one story.
Yep, and they just keep. I don't want to say regurgitating because it sounds bad, but it really is
reprinting.
Yeah, it's reprinting the same thing, the same story, the same. There's nothing. They might add a couple extra pieces in here and there and whatnot, but it really is just the same thing over and over again. By the way, Marvel, if you make a blank cover for that, just know I'll buy
it. but that's the thing. I think that's a lot, and a lot of the books you'll have like I said, multiple covers. You may have, bound hard covers and soft covers. And I do a lot of communication with a friend of mine who has a comic store, and it used to be that they had staggered out. So the hardcover would come out, and then a month or two, then the soft cover would come out at a cheaper price. Now they've gotten to the points where they're releasing the hardcover and the soft cover the same week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I don't know. That's kind of my take. I wanted to kind of get the cash grab part of it in there, and I
appreciate that.
It's not just Marvel. It's not just DC.
It isn't. It isn't really.
It's independent.
It's everybody. It's every publisher. Totally. 100%.
Because I mean, in the end, you want to get your story out there. You want to get your comic, whether it's a floppy, whether it's a trade, and you want to entice people to pick your stuff up. Which like I said, cash grabs. Foil covers, metal covers. You know what I mean? Blank covers. You want people. You want something that's going to attract somebody. You know what I mean? You want something that's going to appeal to everybody. Something to appeal to everybody, I guess is what I'm saying.
There you go.
The perfect example is how many of the Marvel titles were redone with Disney.
Yep. All of them.
So you've got, a lot of people that are big Disney fans want to pick that up because, they tie in with that stuff. So it's a lot of, hitting the shared interest. And one of the things I thought that was really interesting that Marvel did very early on was in the 80s is their Transformers number 3 had Spider-Man in it.
Yeah.
So they kind of bridged that gap too. So interesting.
Oh yeah.
All right.
And you know, every Spider-Man out there, regardless of what they think of Transformers, is going to want to have that book
because it has Spidey in it.
The one thing you learn about fans, comic fans, are they are completists.
That's right.
They want every issue, every storyline, every guest appearance. Got to have them all.
Yep. Not just fans, but creators too, because we're fans of our own work and fans of our fellow and artists that we favor. So
Yep. Always.
Yeah. We don't focus on the 2 issues in a run that you're missing. No.
Right.
No. We're not completists.
Right. All right. We have been that Silverline show on Tuesday talking about relaunches, crossovers, and cash grabs. And I hope we covered the subject well. Watch our other streams that we have. Wednesday Whammers, Wednesday at 9 Eastern, and our Silver Sunday at 8 o'clock on Sunday evening. So, with all that said, until next week, guys. Make mine.
There it is. Make mine
Silverline.
Hi, I'm Dave Dorman. Make mine Silverline.